Welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore Mercury's retrograde, which begins initially in Aries on the 15th of March. Now this is going to occur at just over 9 degrees, but by the 30th of March Mercury is inversing back into the water sign of Pisces and re-meeting Neptune, the modern ruler of that sign, just as he's about to switch into Aries. I'm going to share with you the themes of Mercury retrograde, but what we can expect initially in the sign of Aries. Aries, the ram, a fire sign ruled by Mars that can be combustible. Mercury retrogrades, as we know, can lead to those inevitable cross wires, misunderstandings and miscommunications. But Mercury retrogrades can also give us an opportunity to reflect, reappraise, to reset our posture in how we approach a situation. And because Mercury first burst into the sign of Aries early in March, something that we tried then might not quite have gained traction in the way that we hoped. I'm going to share with you the event chart that shows Mercury closely aligned to Venus. They did come into a very close connection this week in a conjunction. But what's the implication of that? Because that event chart shows Mercury and Venus in the 12th house, which can be very mystical, but can also be very psychological. And also in that 12th house, we have the Pisces posse of Neptune, the North Node, Saturn and the Sun. What's the implication of that? Mercury is also going to go direct on the 7th of April and it will return to Aries. When it goes direct, it will be in Pisces. It will return to Aries on the 16th of April before emerging from the post-retrograde shadow on the 26th. In fact, the pre-retrograde shadow began on the 1st of March, so the whole process takes in total around about 8 weeks. I'm going to unpack all of this for you, then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. Thank you for joining us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are greatly appreciated. If you are new and you've yet to subscribe, please help the channel to thrive by doing so now, but also click or tap the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to work with me directly, I am a consulting astrologer. Please see my testimonials below. Also, you can check out my astrology reading service, which is proving very popular. Please see below for more on that. Also, you can take advantage of my unique personal horoscope reports package. You can order your life roadmap report, perhaps the most important document anyone can ever read about them. Totally unique to each person it's produced for, gives searing insights, helps to guide our moves, but also helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our life thus far. But also in my package at 30% off, you can get your 12 months transits. That helps you to plan your moves over the next year. Please see below for more. Finally, we now have a membership scheme on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, please see the link below for more on that. So Mercury retrogrades have a big reputation of causing mischief. But what does Mercury in Aries represent? The sign of Aries is very much about thrust, initiative, instincts, taking action quickly. So it's about fast thinking, but because Mercury is very close to Venus, a planet which is detrimented in the sign of Aries, where its fast action in terms of affections or money doesn't always work in a positive way. But This retrograde is going to last for 23 days. And as I mentioned, initially it will be in Aries. It's going to invert back into Pisces on the 30th of March. But as it does, it's going to meet up with the swirling, potentially deceptive energies of Neptune. Because Mercury is about messages, it is about being the intermediary. It can be about distribution, certainly about marketing and contracts. It is going to be important to micromanage all the details, because Mercury's rulership of Virgo is very much about precision and analysis. It's about clarity. Mercury's rulership of the sign of Gemini is about those quick, sparkling ideas, the exchange of thoughts in a very fast and rapid way, very much in keeping with the age we live in terms of instant message, emails and text. So all of those areas are going to require a little more care, because the impetuous energy and the impatience that can come up with Aries energy suggests we shouldn't rush any interactions that we have. Now, of course, because Mercury does rule technology, that could be an area that comes up for review. Then again, Mercury's rulership of Virgo could be about a trusted domestic appliance, a washing machine, a vacuum cleaner that's been reliable may suddenly need some servicing and attention. But the other thing to consider with Mercury in Aries is if we want something to happen for us and it isn't moving at the pace that Aries likes, which is rattling along, that can create an overload, an overwhelm. And that is something that we need to be mindful of. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart from a Placidus perspective, but based on the prime meridian and universal central time. That's because I feel we can all collectively relate to this. And you can see the ascendant, ironically, is in Aries. But that does mean that Mercury is just in the 12th house. Mercury in the 12th house, just like it is in the sign of Pisces, is not its best location. Mercury in Pisces, for example, is detrimented, but some of the essential dignities, like Mercury in Sagittarius, can actually have a real upside. Mercury in Sagittarius gives us an enthusiasm for knowledge, travel, widening our perspective. Yes, it can be someone who wants to tell us about all they know, and it can lead to a degree of exaggeration or an impatience to the degree that we don't check the details, particularly around those aforementioned contracts. But Mercury in the 12th house is very psychological, it's very emotional, can be spiritual to a degree, and because Mercury is so close to Venus, the planet of relating and money, I feel it's possible for some people through this 23-day retrograde that they could hear from someone from their past. Now, whether that message or that contact is appreciated or welcomed will depend on each person's unique situation. But the other thing that can happen is that we can feel a lot more nostalgic, reflective for our connections to people from the past. So don't be surprised if you do get out an old box of photographs or albums and start to just go through them and reminisce about the times long gone. But also Mercury and Venus can be about the detail of contracts. So in the 12th house, there could be some behind the scenes discussions. And it's a good time to actually do market research in a very deep way. Not necessarily in a way that we need to share even, just quietly assimilating information. That can be very helpful. But you also see on the other side of the heavens is the moon. And the moon in Libra appreciates balance, equilibrium, but it is in the precise 6th house. So moon opposite Venus on this particular event does point towards an exuberant personality, but also because Mercury is opposite the moon, it can mean that we use our mind in such a way that we dismiss our feelings. So that's something just to be conscious of as well. But look at that collective in Pisces, the posse, and particularly the fact that we have Neptune, the node, in that tight embrace, but also the Sun and Saturn. I feel in some ways we could be thinking and talking about or having a conversation about something that has been very historical. So if we're trying to work out some past hurts and upsets, perhaps talking to a counsellor, perhaps digesting and releasing, decompressing from some old issues, because the sign of Pisces is very much the sign of culmination, and if there is something we haven't quite let go, we can use this Mercury retrograde in a very positive way to think about how we can unburden ourselves from the thoughts which may in some ways have an impact on our physical or emotional well-being. So that's something that could be very, very helpful. But also I feel that potential for a contact from the past could mean for some people they may hear from an old flame. Now, I wouldn't be in a blind rush to meet up with someone. I think the most important thing is to assess what the intent is behind the connection. We've got a big dialogue going on in the situation around Ukraine about the peace process. And certainly the sign of Pisces can be about peace, and the planet Venus can also be a peacemaker too. But is the dialogue going to come to anything, or are deeper agendas working away which is going to prevent something that can be lasting, but most of all just? You'd have to say that could be quite a tough hoe in order to achieve. So through these 23 days, but particularly when Mercury inverses into Pisces, I feel that's an essential dignity that, unlike Mercury and Sagittarius, really doesn't work very well at all. So at the end of March, I feel that there could be a great deal of confusion, distortion, and even the potential for some trickery, which Mercury does rule, if someone is not giving us hard and fast information. And the phrase that came up for me, to be honest, when I was planning this, was smoke and mirrors. So initially, the retrograde in Aries could see some positive, because the sign of Aries can be very positive, some positive sounds and noises being made, but whether they're actually come to something or just fizzle out and be dispersed and washed away in a way that's not lasting, as Mercury tethers into Neptune on the 30th, I feel that that's an entirely likely possibility. But just to tell you, on the 24th, there is a Mercury cazimi, the 24th of March, but it's an inferior conjunction because of Mercury being in retrograde. Just doesn't change the fact that the Sun helps Mercury to glow up. It radiates its energy in a positive way, but I feel that we are in for a potentially challenging time when it comes for clarity. So even if we hear from someone and it seems promising, even if we reach out to someone with a great idea that is full of possibilities and has great excitement around it, it's going to be in the early part of April that we can really start to assess how things are progressing. And that will be when Mercury goes direct on the 7th, but it won't really be until the 16th when Mercury returns to Aries, and the 26th of April when it emerges from the post-retrograde shadow. So if you are discussing something, for example, if you're going through a separation in a big relationship, you're leaving a business where it hasn't proved viable for you to stay there. Perhaps there's been a breakdown in communication or trust. And trust in the 12th house is a massive thing. If we don't really trust people, it's going to come up over these next 23 days. But it will be by the 26th of April that we get to a lasting position, and a position which gives us a greater sense of what's really possible. But anything that was started at the early part of March, we have gone through a period of excitement, but then Venus went retrograde, and although Venus and Mercury have been in a very strong conjunction broadly within 3 degrees through the first 10 days of March, I feel it's what comes out from the process that's going to be really important. So whether it's around romance, business, job applications, waiting for appointments for health issues, because the 12th house can be very much to do with healing. If we are thinking about getting some treatments, it would be, I have to say, a great time to think about going away to a spa for a weekend and luxuriating in the waters and washing away the aches and pains of life. For that, absolutely fantastic. And of course, the sign of Pisces can be about deep reflection. So I feel that that's possible. But if something initially seems promising, you will need to make sure that it comes out as you hope. So I think for us all, it is setting realistic expectations at this juncture. Please stay with me as I go through each of the tile signs. If you've yet to check out my new website at www.patrickarundel.com, please join me. We've got lots of exciting new content. It's much easier to navigate than the old website. Obviously, when you change something, people are used to how it was. The old website was very hard to maintain, and over time I feel people will really appreciate this. But please come and visit us and see what you think too. So Aries, this Mercury retrograde season can be intriguing. The part of your nature that likes to initiate and take action could be thwarted in some ways because of Mercury and Venus both inverting back into the sign of Pisces. But I feel that they give you an opportunity, if you see it that way, to wind up something that's still lingering, that's having an impact on you in the here and now. And it could be something that's rooted right down in your psyche. It may be to do with a past relationship. It may not be that you're still in contact with that person, but maybe the impact that they had is still echoing away within you. However, do be aware that you have a stunning return of the sun on the 20th to your sign. That ushers in the new astrological year, but also the sun combines with Venus in your sign in a retrograde. The following 13 weeks, a cardinal quadrant 1 therefore, can see you really shine and charm people. And also, the two of them then link to Pluto, the planet of transformation, in your sector of friendships, your network and long-term plan. So although the Mercury retrograde and Venus too, as they both invert back into Pisces, may seem like you're having to go over old ground and could be inhibiting you in some ways, they're actually helping you to clear the way, to release old energies that help you to move more into the here and now. And indeed, by the 29th of March, a stunning solar eclipse, the last in a series in your sign, gives you a backdrop for the following 6 months to be hugely dynamic. And of course, also Neptune steps forwards and moves into your sign. So if you are an imaginative person, a creative person, a healer, you're really given a huge platform to shine over the following 8 months. But if you do find yourself feeling a little bit vulnerable at times, or someone talks about something that is somewhat sensitive, I think the thing to just be aware of, if you do feel somewhat triggered, it may be because that energy, as much as it may seem like they're being a bit provocative, perhaps even unkind, it's actually something that's still there to be activated within you. So if you give that the attention and give yourself the time to just let things settle within you and try to think about things with a new, more healing perspective, that can be very helpful. But if there are some people around you, Aries, where you can't 100% count on their support, any fair weather friends may be revealed over this retrograde season, unfortunately. But I think once Mercury gets back to your sign in the middle of April, you'll really be set fair to seize the moment and step forwards in a hugely impressive way. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Taurus, as Mercury joins your ruler Venus in a retrograde, which for you is in the tender 12th house, the collective in the sign of Pisces, which is very businesslike with Saturn very close to the Sun, is urging you to think about your long-term plan, to set your aspirations. But to get to those aspirations, your network, your connections are going to be important. What you could find initially, until Mercury inverts back into Pisces on the 30th, is that if you've got any slight doubts about that future direction, they're likely to come up between now and then. And you may find yourself wanting to try to understand why something feels blocked, or you might feel inhibited, or you don't feel quite as confident as you'd like to feel. And because Venus is in your 12th house as well, it may be that your energy is picking up on that of the people around you in an almost unconscious way. So energetic exchange is something that really fascinates me. Sometimes we don't even have to have a conversation to feel the energy of another person, even of another being, like an animal. So if your sixth sense starts to inform you of perhaps moving away from a person, a group of people, or a hope that you had, don't beat yourself up about it. You're actually letting your instincts guide you, which is a really positive thing. But your mind, Mercury, can almost judge you for seeing something in a different way. And because you are someone, being a fixed sign, that can have a sense of purpose, and you can be very methodical about moving towards what you want to achieve, you could doubt any doubts that you have. So it's important to give yourself a little bit of slack if you do think of changing your mind about those long-term hopes. But also another thing that's really important for you at the moment is whoever you're meeting up with, whoever you're exchanging ideas with, having fun with, that you just feel really safe with that person. Not that they're necessarily going to do something in a particularly dark way, but just that they don't drain you out, that they don't erode your sense of self. So at the moment, through this retrograde season, I feel that you should be very picky about who you spend time with. And if you do, hang out with the people that you know are 100% the solid citizens in your world. You'll navigate this Mercury retrograde, particularly first of all in Aries, all the better. But if there are some adjustments to be made to your long-term plan, the chances are you're going to have to make them by the end of March. And if that is the case, the key is don't judge yourself. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Cancer, the interplay between the energy of the retreating Mercury and Venus in the sign of Aries, along with Chiron, and the pack of players in Pisces is indelible as this event begins. And because the position of Mercury and Venus are in a very visible area, and together in the conjunction can be very creative, I feel that what you're wanting is recognition for your talents and ideas. But I feel the clue comes from the role of Saturn, very close to the Sun. If you do feel that you're in some ways snared by a restrictive environment, rules and regulations, there's not much flexibility, there's a particular set of expectations. If you're someone who likes to be much more creative, the world of work could be quite complex over the next few weeks. For some people, they may want to use the Mercury retrograde to retrain, to skill up in a way which makes you more employable future forwards. But for other people, it could be a time when you want to bail out of something which just isn't enjoyable any longer. but particularly through to the end of March. Whatever your circumstances, Cancer, it's going to be critical that the way you express yourself to anyone influential is with great thought and care, to not rush any communications that you have. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Leo, Mercury retrograde in your 9th house can see you thinking a lot about contracts, higher education and travel. The fact that Venus is so close to Mercury, despite the retrograde, I feel has a lot of promise. It's just the energy in the sign of Pisces is asking you to think about the money and to think about your connection to others about the money. Or in a romantic context, because the Pisces energy are all about where we're most deeply invested, Saturn being there is asking some searching questions, particularly with the lunar eclipse we've just had. So the conversations you have need to give you a sense of reassurance. Mercury in retrograde in the 9th house can ask you to check out people's motives. It can in some ways be a truth seeker. But once it goes back into the sign of Pisces at the end of the month, if you are trying to negotiate something, it might prove to be quite tricky and something keeps shifting and it's hard to pin people down. But essentially, if you are traveling or wanting to learn something new or thinking of buying a new vehicle, important to understand that you can do it. I'm not one of those people that thinks that Mercury retrograde is a time when everything has to stop. What we need to do is make sure that what we can control is done in a meticulous and careful and precise way. That helps us to, in some ways, push back on the Mercury retrograde potential for mistakes and errors. But of course, no one can completely control everything. So even if you have a plan B when you're traveling somewhere, suddenly there could be some kind of industrial dispute affecting airlines, railways or ferries. So that's how Mercury retrogrades can work. But what you can do is make sure that you're really vigilant around the details, around information. And as long as you're clued up, you'll be doing your best to deal with this situation. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. Virgo, Mercury going retrograde is a big deal for you because it's your guide planet. In the sign of Aries, that's very much to do with penetrative thinking, getting beneath the surface. It may be that something that was looking promising, particularly around a financial matter, may actually pause, and that could initially create a lot of frustration. What you can do, however, is become better informed, understand more about the subject or the situation or even the person that you're drawn towards. Venus in retrograde at the same time suggests that with them both in conjunction, there's possibilities from this. You may find that through the period to the end of March, that if you do reset your position, it's for the best. But you may need to connect to someone else to make that work for you. And that's why Neptune applying to Mercury at the end of this month could be a little bit tricky. Now, if you are trying to collaborate with someone on a business idea, a partnership, I feel that you should proceed with a degree of caution, to be honest. Saturn's saying to you, make sure there's a clear understanding of who does and contributes what, a terms of reference which is enshrined formally. Both sides know what they're going to provide and what the expectations are. In a romantic context, Mercury and Venus in the 8th house is about shared finances. If you're lucky enough to be in a tie where you have a good understanding and a trust for one another, I don't feel that this Mercury retrograde in itself will affect your relationship. But if you are thinking of a big ticket item purchase, the 8th house can be about that. I feel making sure that you're both absolutely on the same page before going ahead is really vital. If you're getting to know somebody, by the end of this month, they could be having quite a shimmering, mesmeric impact upon you. But again, you'll know how much this is for real by the middle of April, when Mercury moves back into the 8th house, which is much more about deep commitment. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Libra, Mercury joining your ruler, Venus in a retrograde in the 7th house, that really does point to the potential for some cross wires around relationships. But it also points to the potential to maybe look at a relationship situation in a new light. And that's where Mercury retrogrades can be so beneficial. Sometimes we're heading towards something and we get caught in a particular pattern because that's what we think is required. But when we do reach some kind of roadblock, even if it can initially frustrate us, it can help us to appraise the situation afresh. And I feel that that's the opportunity here. And it is entirely possible that someone that you were interested in could be in touch, or someone that did seem to be absolutely wonderful could lose their luster a little bit. But the 7th house and the fact that we've got the cluster of energy in Pisces suggests that where the care may be needed is in a worldly or professional relationship. It's important that you don't sabotage a situation by being perhaps a little too cautious, Saturn on the Sun, or perhaps a little too demanding that every detail is on your terms. You have a reputation of being fair and moderate and wanting to achieve harmonious outcomes. But I feel that now that Pluto's moved into your 5th house, and with Saturn so close to the Sun in the part of your chart to do with obligations, you may find yourself being a bit stronger about what you will or will not agree to, and that will be highlighted particularly over the rest of March. As you go into the early part of April, I feel the discussions you're going to be having are almost exclusively going to be about work, or at home, more about who does and contributes what to the domestic scene. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. Scorpio, Mercury going retrograde for you is in the 6th house. The 6th house is a kind of Virgoan energy, even though the host is the fiery Aries. The 6th house is those everyday details. And it's important that you are vigilant and precise and on the ball when it comes to the processes, particularly in your work through to the end of the month. But also, if you have got some upcoming appointments, things like dental treatment or the vets, if you've got animals, those things are things that could change and change suddenly, because the 6th house does influence those things too. But also it could be a chance for you to gain more information and knowledge about things like diets. Sometimes we might feel that these things are a bit dull. The 6th house is not really very sexy, to be honest, but a precision around understanding those finer details can help you to see the bigger picture in a clearer way. Now later in the month and going into April, it becomes very much about Mercury and your social situation. There may be someone at the end of March who really catches your imagination, but this person could be quite mysterious, and it may be difficult to get to know what their true motives are. But at the same time, there may be something about them that you just find absolutely captivating, and it may be difficult to let go of that interest, even if other signals are telling you that perhaps it's not the best thing. But by the middle of April, I feel some of the clutter and uncertainty will have resolved. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Sagittarius, Mercury going retrograde is your 5th house for you. Venus retrograde too in the 5th house. They're in a conjunction. That's delightful. Yes, they're retrograde, so that means that something could change or be reset, but the fifth house can be about joy. It can be about love, romance, dating, socializing. So naturally, there could be some changes that are planned through to the end of the month. But once Mercury inverses back into Pisces and briefly connects to Neptune, but then goes on back into Pisces fully before re-emerging back into Aries on the 16th of April, you could go through some deep thinking about what you want around those potentially joyful parts of life. If there is someone that you're really excited by romantically and it doesn't rattle along at quite the pace you want, you might get quite anxious. And part of the reason for that is the planets in Pisces, which are really asking you to become much more conscious about how you feel about things. If I said to you 10 years ago how much you would have evolved in an emotional context to now, I think you'd be surprised. And the lunar eclipse we've just had emphasizes again how home, emotion and family have become so much more of a priority. So even if there's someone you're really drawn to, whether it's a friend socially or more romantically, it's whether you really feel comfortable with that person at a more emotional level that might be quite telling over the next few weeks. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Capricorn, Mercury retrograde in the sign of Aries along with Venus could see you thinking a lot about where you're living. If you are wanting to change where you're living in a physical sense, perhaps even decoratively, and you're trying to get some people to come in to help you, you may find that there is a delay or a snag. So if you're dealing with contractors, just be prepared for that. But likewise, if you're trying to complete on a purchase or a property rental, that could be an area that's delayed as well, unfortunately. But the fourth house is about emotional communication, and Mercury really isn't that keen in the fourth house. Mercury likes to think, doesn't like to feel. Venus being in your fourth house though is positive. One area you can make this retrograde between them work is if you do work from home, you can remodel your space in a way which gives you a little bit more peace and quiet. So if you can find your little place within your abode and make it more secure and more organized, that's the way you can use the retrograde to your advantage. But the fourth house is about home and family and emotions, and the third house, where your ruler Saturn is so close to the sun, can be about your immediate environment such as neighbors and locality, but also siblings. So if there isn't a good flow with people close to you, whether it is those people who live next door or a sister or a brother or within your extended family, unfortunately it could show up over the next few weeks. It's going to be important, particularly with Mercury inversing back into Pisces by the end of the month, to try to not get too caught up in frustration and to use your words and your thoughts in as delicate a way as possible. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Aquarius, Mercury and Venus being retrograde in your third house. The third house is our everyday connections. It's those bubbly, vivacious communications. So naturally, one or two of those might inadvertently go a little awry. You know that situation where someone sends us a text message and we reply and then we don't hear back from them. We check our phone and realise we didn't send it. And those are the things that Mercury retrograde can flag up. But it's an opportunity, I feel, also to analyse your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs, but also your creative output. Are you reaching the people you want to reach? And if your tactics aren't quite working, this is a great time to dig down and analyze how you might do things in a more efficient way. So Mercury retrogrades are not all about snags, but if you are thinking of buying something online, the third house, very much to do with the digital world, and devices that we all rely upon, very much to do with the third house as well. The third house is also quick, short journeys, and sometimes, from what I understand, that can be when people, all of us, are perhaps a little less attentive when it comes to driving our vehicles. So if you are going to be going somewhere over the next few weeks, really say to yourself consciously, look, I need to just focus on this short journey, because otherwise, if you're still sort of thinking about what was going on in your mind before, your attention might not be quite there. You might not be quite so present. But the third house is about siblings. There could be a connection there, maybe more interaction with neighbours. You might also find yourself wanting to redo or remodel, say, your blog if you have one, or your personal profile on social media. You might want to perhaps rinse a few people out of your contacts who no longer seem to be part of your inner world. So it's a time when any form of quick, fast communication really comes under the astral microscope. But as Mercury inverts back into Pisces, just be aware that any discussions you're having about money will require absolute precision as March ends and April begins. Please join me for a one-to-one by checking out my testimonials below, or you can have a video reading, or check out my special offer on my personal horoscope reports, which have 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Pisces, for you, Mercury and Venus go in retrograde in the second house. Something you had set out on, something you may have been very creative and inspired about, might not be gaining the traction that you hoped it would. That could be frustrating, but it doesn't mean it's a terminal problem. It just means that there may need to be some amendments. By the end of this month, your natural inspiration and creativity and imagination are going to be absolutely at maximum. And by the middle of April, you will be set and leaning into whatever gets delayed in a much more appropriate way. Sometimes through delays we learn a lot about what we did want, and maybe it isn't what we now want because of what we learned. So do expect that there could be some fluidity around your ideas, but particularly around how you earn money and how you bring income into your situation. So Gemini, you have a particular connection to Mercury retrogrades because it's your ruling planet. Your ability to flex quickly, to lean into situations at rapier speed, is one of your great assets. For you, Mercury retrograde in the sign of Aries is about your long-term hopes, but also about your social connection, your friendships. Inevitably, there could be some about turns, some changes of plan, particularly until Mercury inverses back into Pisces. But then once it's there, I think it's very much more to do with your worldly aspirations, job applications, presentations, your connection to employers or employees. Anything to do with your goals and ambitions could get somewhat clouded by the end of March and as you go into April. It may not be until the middle of April that you regain a sense of clarity about what your long-term plans can achieve. And along the way, you may have to discuss things with people who see things very differently to you. Now, whether that's professionally or personally is a moot point. You still have an extremely dynamic set of influences in the part of your chart to do with your network that are going to kick in as March goes on. It's just that Mercury's asking you to stay as flexible as possible. But that's something that you have an innate ability to do beyond most people. It's just that if there is something that you're really inspired by, because the 11th house is our highest hopes, it's going to be important to just lower your expectations somewhat, because especially as the Sun is connected to Saturn as this Mercury retrograde begins. Whatever noises are being made, what actually comes out at the other end may be something that's a bit more pragmatic than your absolute ideal scenario. But it is important to note that there could be some kind of reunion that's in the works with people that you used to be connected to, perhaps through school or college or a business involvement many years past. It's been a pleasure sharing this Mercury retrograde with you. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundel.com, and if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it to thrive by doing so now. Take care, all the best, and goodbye.